The 32nd floor of Sterling Quantum Technologies held its breath at 9:52 on a Wednesday morning. Tom Walker stood near the boardroom door in a gray janitorial uniform, a spray bottle still in his hand. Catherine Sinclair stood at the head of the long glass table, her last sentence to him still cold in the air. 12 board members watched in silence. The elevator chimed. Michael Reed stepped out into the corridor. Black suit, travel creased. 2 steps, then he saw Tom and stopped. He straightened his back. He bowed his head. "Sir, I didn't know you were back." Catherine Sinclair went white. At 4 in the morning, the kitchen light came on above a small island in a second-floor apartment in the South End. Tom Walker measured flour into a blue ceramic bowl with the patience of a man who had done it 1,000 times. He cracked 2 eggs against the rim, stirred without ceremony, and poured the batter onto the griddle in the shape of a leaf. A maple leaf, ridged and lobed, browning at the edges. He flipped it once, watched it set, and slid it onto a plate. He drank his coffee black at the counter while it cooled. The window above the sink showed nothing yet, only the dim shape of a brownstone across the street and the wet shine of October on the bricks. Emma came down at 6 in a navy school dress, hair in 2 careful braids. She climbed onto the stool, looked at the plate, and grinned. "Maple leaf today, maple leaf today," he said. They ate without much talk. She told him about her DNA project. Strands of red and white yarn that had to twist around a pencil. He listened with the full weight of his attention, the way he listened to everything she said, and when she was done he asked her one careful question about base pairs that made her laugh. He walked her to Park Street Elementary at 7:20. At the school gate he kissed the top of her head, told her to remember the longer strand on the left, and stood at the corner until she had gone inside. Sterling Quantum Technologies rose 32 stories of glass and brushed steel above the back bay. Tom came in through the service entrance at 7:50. The doorman, a man named Reggie, who had served 2 tours in Iraq, lifted his chin in greeting. "How's the boy, Reggie?" "Better this week. Antibiotics finally caught." "Good," Tom said. He meant it. In the freight elevator, the maintenance tech, a younger man with paint on his knuckles, asked Tom if his daughter had liked the bookmark he had made her. Tom said she had. He carried a small notebook in his shirt pocket, where the names of every child in the building were written in pencil. On the 18th floor, he opened the research wing with his badge and began his morning rotation. The R&D meeting room still held the smell of yesterday's coffee. He wiped the long table, emptied the bins, refilled the whiteboard markers. Then he stopped. A young engineer had left a derivation on the board, chalked in tight blue letters. "Quantum entanglement, 3rd-order correction." Tom read it once, then again. The 4th line carried an error so small that 99 readers in 100 would miss it. He stood with his rag at his side and looked at it for a long moment. Then he turned away and finished cleaning the room. 2 floors above, on 32, Catherine Sinclair walked the hallway with Brandon Hayes at her shoulder. They were coming out of an early call. Brandon kept his voice low. "Too many legacy staff on the technical floors. They slow culture." Kate nodded without hearing. She was already 3 steps ahead, thinking about the Q3 deck. She passed Tom in the corridor without seeing him. He stepped aside, polite. She did not look up. At the reception desk on 32, Margaret Sullivan watched the moment and her eyes tightened. She picked up the internal line. "Maybe you should come home, Michael." By 2 in the afternoon, the boardroom on 32 had been booked for an emergency session. Brandon Hayes had moved the meeting up. Kate did not love the speed, but he had pushed, and she had her own reasons to want it done. The restructuring deck had been on her desk for 3 weeks. The numbers in it kept her awake. Tom was on the floor's cleaning rotation. He came in early, as he always did, to clear the room before guests arrived. The glass wall along the hallway looked out at the city, gray under a low autumn sky. He wiped the conference table in long, slow passes. He was not in a hurry. He never was. Brandon entered first. He saw Tom and stopped at the threshold. For 1 second something passed across his face that he did not mean to show. He swallowed it and walked in, all business. Kate came 2 steps behind him, head down over a tablet. She looked up. "Excuse me." Her voice was sharp. "This room is closed. We have confidential materials going on this table in 5 minutes." Tom straightened. "My apologies, Miss Sinclair. I was finishing up." He picked up his cloth. "You should have finished before. Out, please." "Yes, ma'am." He moved toward the door at the same measured pace he did everything, the pressure that had been climbing in Kate's chest all morning. The deadline pressure, the deck pressure, the Brandon pressure, found a target. "I don't pay janitors to listen to executive conversations," she said, louder than she had meant. "Do you even understand what we discuss in here?" The room still lead Brandon by the credenza did not move. Tom stopped. He did not turn his head. His eyes moved once, only once, to the loose page lying on the table edge. Page 7 of the restructuring brief. He read a single line. The smallest change went through his face. Gone before it registered. A flyer had slipped off the table onto the floor. He bent, picked it up, and laid it back on the wood. His fingertips touched the brief as he set the flyer down. They did not pluck or tap. They rested briefly, the way a man touches something he himself has built. "Page 7 needs revision," he said quietly. "The variance assumption breaks at scale." Then he walked out. Kate stood very still. Her mouth had opened slightly. Brandon let out a thin laugh. Janitor pretending to be an analyst. Cute. Too fast. Too defensive. Kate did not answer him. She watched the closed door. That night her office was dark except for the desk lamp. She pulled Tom Walker's HR file. Custodial staff, Tier 2. Start date, 2 years ago. Background check clean. Education field blank. References, blank. She typed his name into the search bar of 3 different databases. 10,000 Tom Walkers in Massachusetts alone. She closed the laptop and rubbed her temple. At 11:40 she rode the freight elevator down to the 18th floor. The R&D meeting room was dark, but a low security light glowed on the whiteboard. The engineer's derivation was still there. Beside the 4th line, where the error had been, a small chalk mark had been drawn, and then half erased. A correction begun and pulled back. She stood in the dark for a long time looking at it. Then she walked out without touching anything. The next morning was bright and cold. Tom walked Emma to school with her hand in his. She told him about a girl in her class who had drawn a dinosaur DNA helix in marker on her own arm and gotten in trouble. "Did she draw it correctly?" he asked. "Mostly. Her A's were on the wrong side. Tell her tomorrow, Daddy." Gently. She laughed. He left her at the gate and walked toward the T. At Sterling Quantum, he changed in the basement and started his shift earlier than scheduled. He had a feeling. He did not name it. He took the 18th floor first. On 32, Kate came in at 7. She skipped her usual coffee meeting, told her assistant to hold the deck review, and rode the elevator down without telling anyone where she was going. She had not been to 18 in 6 months. The R&D meeting room door was propped open. She stood in the hallway, outside the line of sight, and watched. Tom moved slowly along the side of the room with a microfiber cloth. He was wiping the small ledge beneath the whiteboard. His eyes were not on the ledge. They were on the new equations a different engineer had written that morning. He read them. He set down the cloth. He picked up a chalk stub. Beside one symbol he made a small mark. Then he rubbed it out with his thumb and looked at the board for another beat, the way a man looks at a thing he has finished thinking about. Then he picked up the cloth again. He never knew she was there. She walked away. In the elevator going up, Brandon Hayes stepped in at 14. His shoulders were tight. He filled the small space with cologne and intention. "Morning. About yesterday." He kept his voice friendly. "The janitor. Did you handle it?" Kate looked at him. "Why do you care, Brandon?" A flicker. "I don't. Just bad optics." The doors opened. She walked out without answering. The executive committee met at 10. Brandon presented the divestiture proposal with the smooth confidence of a man who had rehearsed it. Tier 1 cost takeout. Lean operations. Shareholder value. Kate listened with her pen on page 7 of the brief. "Page 7, she said when he paused. "The variance assumption, that's a placeholder. We'll model the tail risk next sprint." "Have we stress-tested this against the quantum encryption patents?" He answered too quickly. "Those are owned by a trust. We can negotiate licensing post-divestiture. Standard play." She wrote one word in the margin and underlined it. "I'd like to hold the vote a week. I want outside counsel to look at the trust language." His jaw moved once. "Catherine, we're running out of runway." "A week, Brandon." He left the room first. His face was tight. Through the glass wall, Maggie Sullivan looked up from her desk and met Kate's eyes. She gave a small, private nod. No one else saw it. That evening, when the floor had emptied, Tom did the boardroom turnover. On the long table sat the restructuring brief, still open to page 7. In the right-hand margin, in Kate's narrow handwriting, 3 words, patents, verified trust structure. Tom read it. He did not smile so much as soften. He set the brief down exactly as he had found it and turned off the lights. That evening, the kitchen in the South End smelled of butter and warm bread. Tom had made grilled cheese, the only thing Emma asked for on Wednesdays. She sat across from him at the small table, with a sheet of construction paper, a box of colored pencils, and a serious expression. 2 strands, she muttered, twisted, red and blue. Why red and blue? Because purple is what you get when you mix them. Like life. He looked up over his coffee. Where did you get that? School. Good school. She drew for a while. He read a book that had been on the same chapter for 3 days. The light from the lamp above them was warm and yellow. After a few minutes, she put her pencil down. Daddy. Yes. What does sir mean? He set the book down carefully on the table. Where did you hear it? Mr. Patterson at the bookstore. There was an old man with a cane who came in for a special order book. Mr. Patterson said sir to him, and he bowed a little, just a little, with his head. What does it mean? Tom thought. He thought longer than the question required. It's a word people use when they want to show respect, he said finally. When they know that the person in front of them is more important than they look. Emma considered this. She turned her drawing slightly. Then she looked up at him with the round seriousness of an 8-year-old asking an honest thing. Like you? He went very still. Why would you say that, sweetheart? She shrugged, looking back at her DNA. Because you're more important than you look. The room held the quiet for a long second. Then Tom reached across the table, took her small hand in his, and brought it to his face. He kissed her knuckles. He kissed the top of her head when she leaned in. He did not cry. He had finished crying a long time ago. He only held her, briefly, and then let her go back to her purple. He put dinner on the table. Across the city, in a glass-walled penthouse on Beacon Hill, Catherine Sinclair sat on a leather sofa, with a glass of red wine in her hand. The apartment was beautiful and cold. There were no photographs anywhere. A muted news anchor on a wall-mounted screen was talking about a tech merger somewhere in the Bay Area. She was not listening. She set the wine down. She opened her laptop. She logged into the company personnel mainframe, the deep one, the legacy system that predated her arrival by 10 years. She typed the name, Thomas A. Walker, a single hit. Archived employee record. The file was flagged in red. Archived. Do not modify. Access restricted to Tier 0. She did not have Tier 0 clearance. 3 people in the company did. She closed the laptop slowly. She stood up and walked to the window. Boston lay below her, mapped out in lights, the Charles a black ribbon between 2 halves of a city she had been told she now ran. She put her hand on the cold glass. Her fingers shook, very slightly. She did not understand why. She had not understood many things lately. She was beginning to suspect that was the point. Monday morning, the main elevator at Sterling Quantum stopped between the 14th and 15th floors. The car had been climbing well. Then the lights stuttered, the upward motion died, and the cab held. Kate Sinclair was in it. So was Tom Walker. He was on his way to 18. For the first 10 seconds, neither of them spoke. The mirrored panels reflected them back to themselves. A woman in a charcoal coat, with one hand still on her phone, and a man in gray with a cleaning caddy at his feet. The lights flickered. Tom looked up at the ceiling, then at the small control panel beside the door. Phase regulator, he said, almost to himself. They've been delaying the replacement. Kate turned. How do you know that? He gave the smallest smile. Not proud, not arch. I've been here a long time. She studied him for the first time. The graying hair at the temples, cut himself in front of a bathroom mirror by the look of it. The clean line of his jaw, the quiet way his shoulders sat. He met her eyes once, without challenge, and looked back at the panel. The lights went out. In the dark, his voice was even. It will reset in about 90 seconds. Don't be alarmed. She did not say she was not. They stood in the dark. She could hear his breathing. Slow, steady. The kind of breathing that came from a man who had been more afraid of worse things and had survived them. At 90 seconds, the lights came back. The motor caught. The cab climbed. Kate looked at his hands on the rail of his cleaning cart. They were broad and strong. There was a small callus on the side of his right thumb, the exact callus a man developed across decades of writing with his hand on the heel of the desk, of holding chalk against a board for hours, of marking up paper in the way that engineers do. It was not a janitor's callus. The doors opened on 32. She did not move at first. He stepped back to let her out. She turned in the doorway. "Thank you, Mr. Walker." She had never used his name. He inclined his head. "Miss Sinclair." The doors closed between them. In her office, she did not sit. She picked up the internal phone. "Maggie, come in, please." Margaret Sullivan came in and closed the door. "I need to know who he is." Maggie did not pretend not to understand. She stood at the edge of the desk for a long moment. "Miss Sinclair," she said finally, "I cannot tell you. I gave my word to him many years ago, and I have kept it for many years, and I will keep it today." She paused. "But someone is coming back this week who can." She left. Down the hallway in his glass-walled office, Brandon Hayes took a call he had been waiting for. He answered on the second ring and shut the blinds. The voice on the other end was clipped. "We need the vote this week, Brandon, or we walk." He looked out at the city through a narrow gap in the blinds. "You'll have it." He hung up. He did not see Maggie pass his door. He did not see her pick up her own phone 20 feet later and dial a number in Vermont. "Michael," she's asking. "It's time." Wednesday morning came in cold. The wind off the Charles cut up Boylston Street and chased people through the revolving doors of Sterling Quantum a little faster than usual. Brandon Hayes had called an emergency board meeting for 10 o'clock. He had told Kate at 7 that the divestiture vote could not wait another day. He had been firm. He had cited investor signaling. He had used words like decisive, and now Kate had agreed, because she did not yet know what she did not yet know, and because the version of her that had survived 12 years of consulting still believed that decisive was a virtue. She walked the long hallway on 32 at 9:52 with her tablet under her arm. The morning sun came in through the eastern glass and laid stripes across the carpet. At the far end of the hallway, Tom Walker pushed a cleaning cart, slowly, the way he did everything. He did not know about the meeting. No one had told him. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Michael Reed stepped out. Black suit, no overcoat, tie slightly off-center, a leather bag on his shoulder. He looked like a man who had taken a red-eye out of Burlington and a car straight from Logan. Kate had not seen him in 3 months. She had not expected to see him today. He met her eyes and nodded politely. "Miss Sinclair." "Michael." He looked past her, to the far end of the hallway. He saw Tom. He stopped. For one full second, nothing on his face moved. Then he straightened. He set his bag down on the bench beside the elevator, without taking his eyes off the man at the end of the corridor. He walked toward Tom. The hallway watched. 3 board members coming off the same elevator. 2 assistants by the printer. Maggie at her desk. Brandon Hayes, just stepping out of the boardroom holding a thick folder. 3 meters from Tom, Michael Reed stopped. He bowed his head, not deeply. Just the small, deliberate bow of a man acknowledging a person he respected more than himself. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "Sir, I didn't know you were back." The hallway froze. Tom looked at him. 4 seconds. The cleaning cart at Tom's hip, the spray bottle still in his hand. "I never left, Michael," he said. The 2 assistants by the printer did not move. One of them had her hand still on a paper tray. Maggie's eyes were bright at her desk. The 3 board members stood close enough to hear and far enough to be witnesses. Kate stood 5 meters away with one hand on the boardroom door handle. She had stopped breathing. Brandon's folder lowered slightly. The color in his face moved out toward gray. Reed turned. "Miss Sinclair." His voice was careful and very, very tired. "We need to delay the board meeting. There is someone you should meet." Formally, Kate's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Tom spoke first. He looked at Reed, and his voice was low. "Mike, let's not make a scene." Then he looked at Kate. "Miss Sinclair, I am sorry about yesterday. I should have introduced myself properly." Kate's hand left the door handle. She did not yet know what was happening. She knew only that the room she had walked into 6 months ago was not the room she had thought it was, and that she was no longer the most important person standing in it. To her surprise, the realization did not crush her. It cleared her, the way cold water clears a head. Tom, in his gray janitor's uniform, walked past her into the boardroom. 16 years ago, he had stood in that same room with Michael Reed and signed Sterling Quantum into existence. Brandon Hayes did not move. Kate followed Tom in. In the boardroom, the door clicked shut. 3 senior board members had followed Reed in. Eleanor Park, a former federal judge who had been on Sterling's board since the second round. Daniel Choi, a venture partner who had written the company's Series B. And Walter Friedman, 68, who had taught at MIT for 30 years and was the reason Sterling existed at all. Friedman looked at Tom across the table and said, with great simplicity, "Welcome back, Doctor." Kate sat down very slowly. Michael Reed stood at the head of the table. He did not need notes. He had told this story to himself 100 times. Dr. Thomas Anderson Walker, Ph.D. from MIT in 2007, applied cryptography under Walter here. Postdoc at the Institute for Advanced Study, founding chief scientist of Sterling Quantum Technologies, 2009. The company we are sitting in was built around 5 foundational patents in quantum-resistant encryption. They are all registered in his name. Kate's eyes moved to Tom and stayed there. His wife was Dr. Sarah Walker, Reed continued, microbiologist at Mass General. She died of pancreatic cancer 3 years ago this November. Their daughter Emma was 5. He paused. Tom transferred his operating stake into a family trust. He stepped down as chief scientist. He told me he needed quiet. He told me if I ever announced any of this publicly, he would leave the country, so I kept it quiet. The room was very still. He came back to this building, but not to 32. He took a position with building services because the hours match Emma's school day. He has been on the 18th floor for 2 years. A board member exhaled a word that might have been a curse. Kate looked at Tom. Her voice was lower than she had expected. "The trust holds the patents." "Yes," he said. "Brandon's restructuring plan." Tom did not pause. "Would have separated my patents from the company that depends on them. Atlas Capital would have purchased them and licensed them back at a markup. Or, more likely, sat on them until Sterling lost its market position and bought the residual cheap. 3 years, maybe 4. It is a clean play if you do not mind destroying 1,000 jobs," Eleanor Park said very quietly. "Christ." Reed turned to Kate. "Did you know about Atlas?" "No." Her voice was rough. "I was told it was internal restructuring. Brandon brought the deck himself." Tom set his hands flat on the table. "Miss Sinclair, you are not the problem. You were given bad information by someone whose job was to give you good information." He looked at her in a way no one had looked at her in 6 months. Not as a CEO, not as a target, not as a number. As a person who could still choose right. She did not cry. She had not cried at her father's funeral. But she nodded, slowly, twice. Something in her ribs moved. She pressed the intercom. "Maggie." "Yes, Miss Sinclair." "Tell Brandon Hayes I need to see him in 20 minutes in my office. And bring me every original founding document we have, and every outside consulting disclosure Brandon has filed in the last 6 months. Hard copies. Today." A pause on the other end. Then, with a warmth Kate had never heard from her, Maggie said, "Yes, ma'am." Reed sat down. Walter Friedman reached across the table and put one hand briefly on Tom's wrist, the way an old man touches a son he has not seen in a long time. Tom stood. He had a floor to finish. He left through the side door. Kate watched it close. She did not look away for a long time. After the others left, the boardroom kept the quiet that big rooms keep when something important has happened in them. The light on the long table had shifted to the soft gold of early afternoon. Kate sat at the head of it, her hands folded in front of her, her tablet untouched. She did not move for a long time. The side door opened. Tom Walker stood in it. He had paused on his way out of the floor, his cleaning cart abandoned somewhere down the hall. He did not speak. He came in and walked the length of the room, and stopped 2 steps from her chair. He did not sit. He turned to face the windows. The city below them was bright and very still under the autumn sun. The Charles was a band of silver. The buildings of Cambridge stood across the river in clear, hard light. Kate did not turn her head. She looked at the same view he was looking at. "Why didn't you tell me?" she said. "Because you would not have heard me." She let that land. She did not argue. After a moment, she nodded once. "I was so afraid of failing the quarter." Tom kept his eyes on the river. When Sarah was dying, he said, "I learned the quarter does not matter. The decade matters. The life matters." She turned her face to look at him. He did not look back. He was watching the water. That, she understood after a moment, was how Tom Walker protected soft things. By not looking directly at them. "Your daughter," she said. "Emma." His mouth moved into the first true smile she had ever seen on him. "She asked me yesterday what sir means." A sound came out of Kate that surprised her. A small, dry, half-broken laugh. She had not made that sound in months. She put her hand to her mouth as if to check that she still owned her own face. Tom did not look at her then either, but the corner of his eye softened. He stepped back from the window. "Miss St. Clair." "Yes. Brandon will fight. He has Atlas behind him, and Atlas has money and lawyers. Let him fight." He nodded. "I have you," she added. The words came out before she had filed them. He turned then. Finally. He looked at her once, plainly, and the look was not romantic and not paternal and not pity. It was the recognition of one adult by another. "You have the truth," he said. "That is enough." He left through the main door. Kate sat alone at the table. The light through the windows moved another 2 degrees across the floor. Outside, the wind had picked up. She could see the tops of the trees on the common bending. Somewhere in the building, a door closed. She did not pick up her tablet. She did not look at her phone. She did not think about Q3. For the first time in 6 months, she thought about nothing at all, and the room kept the silence with her. 2 days later, the full board met. 11 voting members, coffee on the credenza, a tray of pastries no one touched. Brandon Hayes took his place at the long side of the table, with the same folder he had carried Wednesday morning, slightly thicker now. He stood. He presented the divestiture proposal a 3rd time, and his voice was good. He was a good presenter. He always had been. He spoke about lean operations and shareholder value. He used the word efficiency 7 times. He did not look at Kate. Kate waited until he finished. Then she stood. "Before we vote," she said, "I would like to introduce the original architect of Sterling Quantum's core intellectual property. Many of you on this board have not had the chance to meet him formally. That oversight is on me." The door opened. Tom walked in. He was not in his uniform. He was not in a suit. He wore a gray cardigan over a white shirt and slacks and good shoes that had been cared for. He looked like what he had always been, which was a math professor in middle age who happened to have built a billion-dollar company twice over. Walter Friedman stood up. Eleanor Park stood up. 2 other board members who had not seen Tom in 15 years rose without thinking about it. The rest of the room understood, gradually, that something had changed before they had arrived. Tom did not stand at the head of the table. He stood at the long side, opposite Brandon. He spoke for about 4 minutes. He spoke without notes. He explained the patent architecture. He explained how Brandon's proposal would sever the patents from the implementation pipeline. He explained the 3-year decay curve that would follow. He did not raise his voice once. He gave numbers and he gave names. He named Atlas Capital. He said the words silent equity stake. He said the words personal consulting arrangement. Daniel Choi opened a folder Maggie had handed him at the start. He read one line aloud. The line had Brandon Hayes' signature on it and a date that was 4 months old. Brandon stood up. He started to speak. No one was listening. The board chair called the vote. The first motion, to approve the restructuring as presented. Against 8. In favor, 3. The second motion, to remove Brandon Hayes from his position as Chief Operating Officer for material conflict of interest. In favor, 9. Against 2. Brandon left through the main door under the escort of 2 members of corporate security. He paused only once at the threshold. He looked back at Tom. He did not say anything. Tom returned the look without expression, without satisfaction, the way a man looks at weather he has been expecting. Kate took the chair at the head of the table. She did not feel triumphant. She felt steady. The chair, which had not fit her for 6 months, fit her now. Not because she had won, because she had finally chosen correctly. 2 weeks passed. The first true snow of the season fell on Boston the first Saturday of December. It came down in soft, flat flakes that hung in the air longer than they should have and stuck to the iron railings of the bridges in Boston Common. Tom stood on the little stone bridge over the lagoon with Emma. She wore red mittens and a navy coat. She leaned over the railing on her elbows, watching the carp move beneath the surface of the dark water. She had been quiet for a long time, the way she got when she was thinking about something serious. Then she looked up. A woman was crossing the path toward them, not in office clothes. A gray wool coat, hair down for the first time in many months, no makeup. Catherine Sinclair. Emma looked up at Tom. "Daddy, is this Miss Sinclair?" "Yes, sweetheart. Miss Sinclair from work." Emma put out a small, mittened hand. "Hi, I'm Emma. My dad says you are trying to do the right thing now." Kate stopped, surprised, and laughed. The laugh came out small and clean. "Your dad is a wise man." Emma beamed. "Yes. Did you know he calls Mr. Reed by his first name?" Kate looked at Tom. Tom lifted one shoulder just slightly. A duck moved under the bridge. Emma announced she needed to follow it and ran off down the snowy path, mittens flashing, braids bouncing. Tom and Kate stood on the bridge a little apart. They did not touch. They did not say much. "The board has officially restored your name on the founding documents," Kate said. "They want you back. Any role you choose. I'll consult." His breath was visible in the cold. "Quarterly reviews. Nothing more." "Why?" He watched Emma down the path. She had stopped to inspect something near the water. "Because she is 8, he said. "She'll be 18 sooner than I can imagine." "The decade matters." Kate nodded slowly. She understood. The snow thickened. Their breath made small ghosts in the cold air. "Tom," she said. He looked at her then, fully. For the first time in the conversation, she did not say anything else, just his name. It was, sometimes, all that was necessary. Tom's mouth turned up at one corner. Emma came running back, snow in her braids, and grabbed Tom's hand. "Daddy, can Miss Sinclair come for pancakes on Saturday?" Tom looked at Kate. Kate looked at Tom. "If she wants to," Tom said. A small pause. Then Kate said, "I'd like that." The snow kept falling, soft and steady, across the bridges and the bare trees and the lamps along the path. They walked off the bridge together. Emma ran ahead. Tom and Kate walked a little apart, just close enough that their shoulders nearly brushed. Neither of them had been looking for this. But sometimes the most important things in a life arrive in the form of a janitor in a boardroom and a CEO who finally learns what the word "sir" actually means.